and I guess reflecting on it. And I tell you what, one of the best coaching tools I ever sort of came across in the end was WhatsApp. Because I would put a little video together of a clip that I wouldn't necessarily show to the whole team, but I'd send it off to an individual, and I'd say, right, talk to me about this. So I tended to do towards the end of certainly through my spell in Lansdowne, I'd be able to do a lot of individual coaching and the empathy side of coaching around those little
Mm.
clips, so I could have those communication moments without the emotion of the game or the training. Um, so I could get into a bit of a deeper conversation with the player and perhaps show a bit of empathy there. Whereas when you turned up on a Tuesday or Thursday night, I tend to drive you quite hard, and sort of not be overly patient with things. And I probably, that was the downside of just a Tuesday or Thursday night. You had a very limited window, so I sort of made my mind up that I wasn't going to overcoach, and I wasn't going to, perhaps do the empathy thing too well on the training nights. I'd try and do it away from the training nights and in those other moments. And I tell you again, I coached for 35 years, but I learned something when I interviewed Toby Booth, which I wish I'd known 35 years ago. And he made the distinction between having a relationship conversation and a performance conversation. And I thought that's so simple, and it's so really great to do, because you want to get on with everybody. You want to be, if you're the coach, you sort of want to be, having a good dynamic going with the guys, and everyone enjoying it. But you also know there's difficult conversations we had around selection and performance, and it's not an easy one for the coach, Brian. I'm sure you found that step in the other side of the fence, that from suddenly being a player and being part of the team, the whole team dynamic, you're suddenly the leader. Yet you want to be connected to everybody. You want to be, in touch with everybody. You want to feel approachable. You want to feel like you're a listener. But then you've also got to put the wall up a little bit and say, stop there, because this is the time when I've got to tell you a few home truths, or I'm not happy with your performance, or whatever. Um, and, to frame it within that conversation, to say, Brian, let's have a chat. You know, we talked yesterday about your family, and we talked about your job, and we chatted generally as we were going into training about, all those things that help us to develop a good working relationship. But here's the moment where we need to switch over now into a performance conversation, and I really like that, being able to draw that distinction so that the player understands there's two different elements to the coach's job. But the coach is able to flick that switch himself, I guess, to draw that very visible and tangible, um divide between when he needs to show empathy and when he needs to be just very uh, pragmatic, if you like. And sometimes that within that pragmatism could be a very, a big degree of empathy as well, or a big degree of positivity. It doesn't have to all be, you know, negative around the performance. It can be a lot of positivity around the performance, but it's framed in that moment, in that context, and not just part of the general conversation. Which sometimes, if the coach doesn't get that right, you know yourself, it can mean a bit of a breakdown in the relationship between the player and the coach.